All right, everybody, welcome back to Horn Takes. It's Friday. It's a good day. Fridays are always good. Today's especially good Friday. I woke up this morning and everything just seemed right in the world. I don't know why. Like the relationship between Texas and Texas A&M just seems right again. Texas A&M, mass exodus of transfer players. Guys just leaving the program left. I think they have 22 guys enter the transfer portal, something like that. Their number one class from last year, a lot of the guys either got suspended this year or have entered the portal or both. So I don't know. I just woke up this morning and I felt like everything was back in place. Everything just feels right. So we'll do the rundown today. We're not going to run down any football games, but we're going to talk a little bit about some Texas postseason awards. Talk about some recruiting as we roll into National Signing Day, early National Signing Day next week. Talk about some other stuff, some coaching stuff. Chris Beard. We'll talk about Coach Leach. We'll do some tribute stuff to Coach Leach, and then I got to respond to some people about Coach Prime, my comments about Coach Prime. So definitely, if you got children and you're listening to this podcast, when I get to the part about Coach Prime, you might want to turn it off. All right, postseason awards. Texas has been out of the postseason award game for a pretty long time now. And they're starting to get back into it. I remember back in Mac Brown's tenure when the teams were really good, they just had a lot of guys winning a lot of different national awards. And we haven't seen that for a while. And that's what happens when you're just not a good football team. Even when you have really good players, which Texas really hasn't had a lot of really good players in the last 10, 12 years. But even when you do have really good players, they just don't get the same recognition as players on teams that are really good. But Texas is trying to crawl back into that. Bijan Robinson, I think you got to start with him. Doak Walker Award winner. Unanimous All-American, which is something I really didn't even know was a thing. I think there's like 5 different groups that give out All-American awards. And unanimous means all 5 of those groups called him an All-American. So that's pretty prestigious. I think I said it before in a podcast. I think Bijan should have been in New York City. It is what it is. The Heisman is just stupid. Jalen Ford, third-team AP All-American. Jalen Ford, he's a linebacker, by the way. Man, that guy had a really good season. I think he got snubbed on Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. That is what it is. But, man, a really good season. Over 100 tackles, 4 interceptions, a couple of forced fumbles, a couple of recovered fumbles. The guy was everywhere. He played some last year, but he didn't play a lot, and I really don't know why. I'm not the coach. I didn't get to see him every day in practice. So I don't know what kept him off the field yet last year. Whatever it was, he got it fixed, and, man, he had a really good breakout year. I mean, there's even he had such a good year that the NFL noticed him enough where he was having to kind of make a decision. And I don't know that he's come out outright and said, I'm coming back next year, but I think that's kind of the feeling. He's been practicing for the bowl game and stuff like that, so I don't think he's going to jump to the NFL this year. And then this one is a really big one for Texas. If you followed Texas the last few years, really since 2010, The offensive line play has just been really bad. Inconsistent for sure. Probably more consistently bad. So last year, Steve Sarkisian goes out with Kyle Flood, and they recruit just a badass offensive line class. A lot of 4- and 5-star guys. A lot of guys they thought could come in really quickly and help right off the bat. And Kelvin Banks was obviously one of those guys. And he had a tremendous year at left tackle. He's a freshman All-American this year. So congratulations to those 3 guys. There's some guys that got some playing time this year out of that offensive line group that I think are going to be really, really good moving forward. One of them, DJ Campbell, right guard, just a menace in the run game. Just absolutely destroys people in the run game. He's got to work on his pass protection a little bit. That's something that's not really all that out of the ordinary for offensive linemen that come out of high school. You just don't see the type of athletes in high school every single game that you're going to in college. And so pass protection is something that can be pretty tough on a young offensive line. But there's a lot of those guys that played a lot last year. So, I think if they can keep those guys in school, keep them in the program, maybe not necessarily next year, but the year after that, when that core nucleus of guys has developed and are playing together, that's going to be a nasty offensive line. And obviously it'll be anchored there by Kelvin Banks. So again, congratulations to those guys. Texas recruiting got a real big weekend coming up. It's the weekend before National Signing Day, or early signing period. The signing period this year is the 21st through the 23rd. So I believe starting Wednesday and into Friday is the early signing period. There's going to be a lot of commitments in town. One thing Steve Sarkisian likes to do is bring in a lot of the commitments in the class for this last weekend. I think that's kind of cool. I think it obviously builds sort of that family atmosphere. It gets that whole group of guys together. I think Nick Saban does something similar, except he does it during the summer. He brings in all the guys in that recruiting class and kind of gets them together, and they start building that bond. I think a lot of these guys know each other anyway, as much as they camp, and a lot of these guys have played against each other in various sports, most of their lives. So, but I think it's cool to bring them in and start building that family type atmosphere. You got to be family, right? You got to play for each other. And so I think that's pretty cool. I think the other thing it does, obviously, is it gets a lot of guys, incoming guys that maybe haven't decided, gets them excited, and they see that and they feel that. And that can be something that tips somebody or sways somebody into committing to your school and signing with your school. So I think it's cool. I was going to talk about Anthony Hill maybe coming in this weekend. I still don't know if he's coming in this weekend. I feel like he is. He just committed to the University of Texas last night. Sark had his in-home. Huge get for Texas. Anthony Hill, the number 1 linebacker in the country, 5-star. That puts Texas at the number 3 recruiting class with a little bit to go. They have less commits than Alabama and Georgia, who are 1 and 2. So they've still got some room to add to that class and bolster that ranking up even higher. But yeah, Anthony Hill was a huge get. Now Texas now has 4 5-stars, which is the most of any school in recruiting this year. So Sark is getting it done recruiting. I think it's now time to, if this class winds up the way we think it could, it's going to be obviously a really highly rated class. That's going to be 2 really highly rated classes in a row. He's got to do something with it on the field now. I think you get 2 to maybe 3 years as a new coach like that, where you get you have some capital from what you used to be the offensive coordinator at Alabama. He's still got a little bit of that capital in his back pocket. But if you don't start putting your new team on the field and winning games, winning championships, and I'm not talking about national championships, I'm talking about Big 12 championships. you don't start doing that, you start to lose that capital, and those guys aren't looking at you the same way. So I think next year is a key year for Steve Sarkisian and Texas. I really think they got to go out and win some games with these guys that they've brought in. A few guys that will be in town, and there's several on the list, but a couple of sort of key guys. Vandy tight end commit Kamorian Pimpton. This is a guy out of Fort Worth that I think he just kind of busted into the upper echelon here this season. He's a 4-star. I think he committed to Vandy a while back, and now he's starting to get some attention from bigger schools. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he committed this weekend. You got Wake Forest cornerback Gavin Holmes. He's a transfer portal guy. Wouldn't surprise me if he commits this weekend. And then you got Tyler Scott out of Georgia, safety, and Jelani McDonald out of Texas, Waco, Texas, athlete. Those are some of the bigger names. Arch is going to be in town. Cedric Baxter is going to be in town. Anthony Hill will be in town. So really big recruiting weekend for Texas right before we go into National Signing Day. See how they finish out. It's not out of the realm of possibility that they might jump into that 2 or number 1 spot in the recruiting rankings. And listen, that's obviously not indicative of success. Look what Texas A&M's done. I mean, they signed the most historic, highest rated class ever since we've been doing recruiting rankings. And they fell flat on their face this year. And that group has completely fallen apart. So more and more now with NIL and transfer portal and just kids being dumb as fuck, there's no guarantee that you sign a number 1 class and it's going to mean anything. Texas A&M proved that. All right, let's talk about this whole Chris Beard situation. I've done some videos about it on TikTok. What we know today is not a whole lot more than we knew on Tuesday. He got arrested actually on Monday, late Monday. He got arrested really early Monday morning, obviously, for felony assault with strangulation. Apparently his fiance and him got into some arguments. They've been fighting a lot lately. I don't know the whole backstory. I know they've been engaged for like 3 years now. I don't want to get too much into all their personal business, but it sounds like the relationship has kind of deteriorated lately. They got into some sort of physical altercation where she has accused him, and he has allegedly choked her, threw her off the bed. She's got lots of, the police found physical evidence of assault, scrapes, bruises. She had shortness of breath when they arrived, things like that. As far as I know, no bruising around the neck, which, would be indicative of someone taking their hand and like trying to squeeze the shit out of your neck. So I don't know what's going on with this. She came out early the next day while he was still in jail. And so actually earlier, later on that morning, but early still in the morning, saying, she didn't want to press charges. His lawyer came out and said he is 100% innocent. It's inconceivable that he was even arrested, which at the time we didn't have the arrest affidavit. We didn't have a lot of details. And I was like, okay, well, this could be just an upset girlfriend, upset fiance. At that point, we really didn't even know who it was that he choked. We just knew it was a family member because that's written into the charge, or household member is the way they term it. So all that being said, this whole deal it's obviously a bad look for Chris Beard. It's a bad look for the University of Texas. I think one thing that's interesting though, and by the way, Chris Beard claims he has an audio recording that proves that she was the aggressor and that he did not actively assault her, I guess, or I don't know what the term you would use. He didn't go after her. In other words, he was the way it sounds is he was defending himself. The police asked him if he would turn that over to them. He declined. Probably a smart move. I'm sure his lawyers heard it. I'm sure that probably even his boss at Texas has heard it. And that's to me, that is the interesting part. We're on Friday, and we haven't heard anything else about this. Not a single peep out of anybody about this whole deal. They did suspend him without pay indefinitely. It is written into his contract that they can fire him for cause if he's even charged with a felony crime, not convicted, charged. So University of Texas, from a legal perspective, has everything they need to let him go if they want to, but they haven't done it yet. And I don't know why. And I don't say that to mean he's guilty. Like I'm 100%. Let's wait and see. Let's get all the facts before we condemn people and before we fire people and all that stuff. We should do that. So I don't know. I felt like I did a video. I said, I think the only way I don't think Chris Beard's ever going to be the coach again. I just don't think the University of Texas is willing to take on that type of deal. They don't want to mess with that. God forbid they keep him on and something happens again. Then you kind of got like this scandal thing that you gotta talk about, and you gotta talk the world into why you did what you did, and you got to deal with that. You've got that liability. They don't want that liability. So to me, it's super interesting that he's not fired yet. They've said they're going to let the legal process take its course. I still would be very surprised if he was the coach at Texas any longer. I said in that video, I think the best case for him is, he's just not the coach anymore, but he doesn't have any legal problems to deal with. But I think there's one situation which might keep him at Texas, and that's if she just comes flat out and says, hey, I made up the whole freaking thing. I attacked him. He grabbed me to restrain me, and I basically, trying to get away from him, did all this shit to myself. And I think that's conceivable. I don't know if that's what happened. I don't know if you guys have ever been around a woman that sort of lost her shit, but they're like a pit bull almost. They don't want to stop. So it's possible. It's not impossible. Let's put it that way. It's not impossible that she got pissed at him about something, attacked him physically. He restrained her, and through the act of restraining her and her trying to get away from him, she did all this shit to herself. Now, I'm not saying that's what happened, and I'll repeat it again. I said this before. If they find that he in any way attacked a woman, like, he should be fired, and then the legal process should go, that should take place. And if he's found guilty, he should absolutely be punished to the full extent of the law. I don't care that he's a Texas guy. I don't care anything about any of that shit. What I do care about is the truth and people being held accountable for their actions. And you can't hold people accountable for something that they didn't do. So that's why I kind of hate this whole court of public opinion thing we've got going on. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Talk a little bit about Coach Leach. We lost just an absolute icon, legend of college football. And more than that, I think football in general. Obviously, Coach Leach revolutionized college football with his air raid offense. He's built a substantial coaching tree. A lot of guys coaching football today that have coached or played for Mike Leach at all levels. Lots of college guys, and then you got Cliff Kingsbury in the NFL. And one of the interesting things is, the NFL used to be a running league. You used to have to run the football to win in the NFL. I don't know that you have to do that anymore necessarily. It obviously helps. It obviously helps to be able to be balanced, but I don't know that you have to go in and run the football like you used to win in the NFL. And I think a lot of that philosophy that you see today. A lot of these pass happy offenses, I think there's some influence of that from Mike Leach. I think it's crept into the NFL. His coaching tree, again, these are successful guys. Lincoln Riley, Sonny Dykes, Josh Heupel, Dave Aranda. That's 4 guys right there that have either coached for him or played for him that are highly successful guys. And you got Dana Holgerson, Neil Brown, Sonny Cumbie, Ken Wilson, and obviously Cliff Kingsbury. And I think that trio will just continue to go and go and go and go and go. And all the guys that coach for those guys that sort of instill a little bit of that air raid into their offense, into their philosophy when they move on. Crazy. I didn't think about it at the time. When you watched, matter of fact, when I watched Texas Tech back when he was doing that at Texas Tech, and even before that at Oklahoma, when he was the offensive coordinator, I never really thought to myself, this guy's like revolutionizing football. What I was thinking was this guy doesn't have the talent that a lot of other teams have, and so he's doing the best with what he's got, which, if you really think about it, that's being revolutionary. It's being innovative, and that's exactly what this guy was. Huge, just a big loss. Again, can't overstate that. I think one of the interesting things about this is, we've all dealt with coaches passing away, big names passing away, but they were all done with football. He's still coaching football. I think that adds to like the shock factor of him being gone. There's a ton of funny things about Mike Leach, just a ton of interesting things about Mike Leach. But here's a couple of my favorite things, just thinking back about his time. One thing I absolutely loved about Mike Leach was when he was at Tech, he absolutely brutalized Texas A&M. They were 7-5 against Texas A&M, and they beat some really good Texas A&M teams and kind of messed up their seasons and really built like this massive rivalry with Texas A&M. Back when Mike Leach was at Texas Tech, I didn't feel like there was all this hate for Texas out of Tech fans. It was all pointed at Texas A&M, and I don't necessarily know why. But that was Texas Tech's like we fucking hate you team was Texas A&M. And I liked that because obviously I didn't have to hear from Texas Tech fans all the time like I do today. I feel like since Texas A&M has left, and I'll say it, Texas Tech ran them out of the Big 12 by just kicking their ass all the time, fucking up all their seasons. So it was Texas Tech, not Texas, that ran Aggie out of the Big 12. But ever since they left, all of that sort of hate and energy has been redirected over to Texas, and it sucks. I used to love Texas. I mean, I used to think like Texas Tech kind of used to be one of my other favorite teams. Like I used to make it a point to watch a Texas Tech game and root for them. As long as they weren't playing Texas, I would openly root for Tech and be like, I just can't do it anymore just because all the bullshit I have to deal with all the time now as a Texas fan. But anytime Aggie is having trouble, I love it. And Mike Leach at Texas Tech definitely was a pain in the ass for Texas A&M. The other story, and I don't know if a lot of people know about this, and I remember it, but I kind of forgot it, and then I remembered it again as I was just kind of looking up old stuff about Mike Leach. The Cotton Bowl caper. Have you guys heard of the Cotton Bowl caper? So the Cotton Bowl caper, Mike Leach was the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. This was 1999. And they're getting ready to play Texas. And so Mike Leach draws up a fake script, creates a fake offensive script, because a lot of these guys script their plays. He hands it to an assistant coach. And as he's walking off the field before the Red River shootout, he tells him, just drop it somewhere. Like, figure out a way to make it look like you accidentally dropped this thing. So he's walking down the sideline in front of, like, Texas coaches, I guess, Texas assistants, whatever. He's on his way to kind of head up the tunnel, and he fakes like he's putting it in his pants, like the belt, the band of his pants, and he drops it. Some Texas assistant sees it. And the interview I've seen about this, it makes it seem like it was Tom Herman. Tom Herman, I think, was a GA at the time at Texas. I don't know that for fact, so I could be wrong on that. Anyway, a Texas assistant sees it, grabs it, and Mike Leach says he's watching all this from the press box. He sees the guy pick it up and kind of look around like, does anybody see me picking this thing up? And takes it. Obviously, he takes it to Carl Reese, defensive coordinator for Texas at the time, and so Carl Reese goes through basically redoing the game plan for this script, trying to catch him in all these plays. And the funny thing is, all these plays on this script were basically like opposite of what Tech wanted to do, or what Oklahoma wanted to do, what Mike Leach was trying to do. So he would draw like a play that makes everything seem like it's going to the right, and then come out and have some kind of crossing action or something that gets the play, gets the ball to the left side of the field. And so he builds this script, which is basically, hey, here's all the plays you think we're going to run, but what we're really going to do is run all these plays that are completely opposite of what you think we're going to run. And it worked. They scored like 17 points really fast in that game. And Carl Reese, and I don't know how true it is, but he says it's true. He finally takes this fucking script and just wads it up and throws it in the garbage up in the press box. Kind of goes back with the old game plan. And they end up winning the game. I think Texas won that game 38-24 or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was. But that is Coach Leach. And I'm sure that kind of crap happens all the time, but he was okay talking about it, and that's Coach Leach. So the Cotton Bowl caper, that's a funny-ass story, and I guess it's cool to me because it was, a Red River shootout story. So, yeah, man, Mike Leach gone. That's sad for a lot of people. I don't think there'll ever be another dude like Mike Leach. So let's get into this mailbag. You guys can email me at horntakespodcast@gmail.com. I'll answer questions. You guys can cuss me out. You guys can give me your comments. What do you want to see on the show? What type of content? But I got a question. I made a video on TikTok a while back, last week, about Quinn Ewers and actually about the offense going into this Alamo Bowl and just how Quinn Ewers hasn't had a great season. And the video really wasn't intended to be down on Quinn. It was just like the facts. Like it's just how the season has been for him so far this year. And so someone asked me on that video, do you think Texas is going to redshirt Arch Manning, or do you think he'll play right off the bat at Texas? And I think that's an interesting question. And I think it got even more interesting as Hudson Card entered the transfer portal, as Charles Wright entered the transfer portal. So Texas had 4 scholarship quarterbacks to start this season. Quinn Ewers, Hudson Card, Malik Murphy, Charles Wright. So 2 of those guys are gone now. So that leaves Texas with a quarterback room of 2. They obviously got to commit from Arch Manning. So going into next season, they'll have 3. So that's pretty short. I think what'll end up happening is the plan will be, and Arch Manning, when he committed and before he even committed, he had always said, I want a red shirt. I don't want to come in and start anywhere right off the bat. So that's his family's plan. That's his plan. I think it's a good damn plan. Like you don't want to start true freshman quarterbacks. It just doesn't usually work out that great. It's a lot of pressure, a lot of adjustment to the speed of the game. It's not easy. So that's been his plan, and that was obviously Sarkisian's plan as well. And I think that'll be the plan. I don't think Arch Manning, unless they just cannot get any production out of Ewers or Malik Murphy, I don't see any way that Arch Manning plays more than the 4 games required to burn a red shirt. So I'm going to go with the only way Arch Manning isn't a redshirt freshman going into the 2024 season is some kind of catastrophic injuries with those 2 guys ahead of him, or they just are absolutely not doing shit. So I appreciate the question. Again, you guys can hit me up at horntakespodcast@gmail.com. I'll answer your questions. All right. Coach Prime. So I did a video actually on my last podcast, a couple of podcasts ago, last week, towards the end of the week. So the rundown last week, I talked about Coach Prime going to see you. I talked about how I didn't really think his approach to that team and his initial speech to that team was very inspiring. I talked about some of the, possible outcomes of the way he approached that team. And I talked about how there's this sort of ridiculous expectation that he's going to go win the Pac-12 next year, which is just fucking absurd. Like, no, he's not. And so what I do with my podcast is obviously record the whole podcast, throw it up on all the podcast places. I put the video out on YouTube, so you can watch the whole podcast on YouTube if you'd rather do that. But then I take little snippets of the podcast. I throw it up on TikTok, hoping you guys will think something I say is cool and check out the podcast and keep listening to the podcast or watching the podcast. So I do those little snippets to engage people. And man, I just got absolutely hammered with people that called me a hater. There was kind of like three or four of these themes I got in people's responses, and I got a lot of responses to these little snippets. By the way, one of the other things I said was, he's talking about bringing these guys from Jackson State to Colorado. And I don't know how people confuse this, but I guess people thought I was talking about Prime not understanding the speed of the game. I don't give a fuck if Prime understands the speed of the game. Which, by the way, Prime hasn't played football in like 50 fucking years. So all you dumb fucks that kept saying to me, Prime's played at every level and he understands speed and da-da-da. No, he does. The game is different than... I know he's a superior athlete. In fact, he probably understands the speed of the game way differently than most people understand the speed of the... That motherfucker was so fast. The game probably looked like a bunch of old people playing to him. And for most people, that's not what the game of football looks like at a high level. So I don't think Coach Prime understands the speed of the game. And it's not because he's stupid or not because he can't. He just doesn't. He was so physically good that and so fast that most people don't see the game like that. So here's like these responses I got. The obvious, I'm a dumb shit and I don't have anything smart to say, you're just a hater comments. I got a fuck ton of those. That's absurd. I'm not a hater. I don't hate Coach Prime. I don't care if he goes to Colorado and does great. If he does, I'll congratulate him and say, that's awesome. I didn't think you could do that. Good job. I have no reason to hate Coach Prime. I don't even fucking know the guy. So there was that like ridiculous take that I'm a hater because I had I guess to those people, and this is a lot of people, by the way, if you don't have 100% positive things to say about people, you have any scrutiny of people or anything critical to say about people, you're just a fucking hater. It's like the very low ball, lowest of the low, bottom of the barrel fucking response to something you don't agree with. It basically means you don't have a brain. And I got a shit ton of those. And I don't know why I'm surprised. There's a lot of people that don't have a fucking brain. I got a lot of, dude, they were 1-11. He knows everything he needs to know about that team. Bullshit responses. Well, if Coach Prime's so fucking good of a coach, why isn't he going to just take that 1-11 team and the talent that's there and turn that shit around? If I'm not supposed to be a hater and I'm supposed to recognize that Coach Prime is the fucking next coming of Nick Saban on steroids, why does it matter that that team was 1-11? Why does it matter that they don't have a lot of great talent? It's Coach Prime, right? The fact that that team was 1-11 and they're fucking bailing on him already. And listen, he hasn't done anything to turn that around. In fact, their recruiting class has gone down. They were ranked 57th or some shit when he got hired. They're the 66th ranked class in the country right now. Which leads me into my next point. I got a lot of comments about players matter, and he's going to get all these 4-star and 5-star players. He hasn't done it yet. Their class has gone down. Nobody from the portal has committed yet. And I'm getting all this information from 247 Sports. So there may be another site that's more up to date. I don't know. I don't follow the Buffalo website like religiously. I just checked it out just to see what their class was ranked, who was in the class, the makeup of that class, and if they had any transfer guys yet. Their visitor list for this weekend is fucking trash. There's like 2 4-stars on it. The rest of them are 3 stars. Listen, this is the thing you guys got to understand. Coach Prime is the only fucking thing exciting about Colorado football right now. That's it. Colorado football, nobody gives a shit about. Nobody's cared about Colorado football since the 90s. And now you got UCLA and USC leaving the Pac-12. That does 2 things for Colorado football. One, that makes people give a shit less about it because now who the fuck are they playing all the time? They don't even get to play UCLA and USC anymore. The other thing it's going to do is those schools are going to see a jump in recruiting because they're going into the Big Ten now. Who doesn't want to see UCLA, USC play Michigan and Ohio State every couple years? What recruits don't want to be a part of that? Colorado's not an exciting place. And Coach Prime is the only reason anybody's excited about it. And I know he's Coach Prime, and I know I'm just a hater. But if that dude can't win quick, his recruiting momentum's going to wear out. He was able to get guys at Jackson State that he should have never been able to get, and nobody I don't think has ever gotten, and nobody ever will get like that again. He's not going to do that shit at Colorado. So this whole you're a fucking hater, and that team was 1-11, and he's going to get all these 4 and 5-star guys, and I seen people saying he's going to win the Big 12 or the Pac-12 next year. Just watch. No, he's fucking not. And that's not a knock on him. It's a fucking ridiculous expectation you dipshits have. Coach Prime is not taking Colorado to the Pac-12 championship next year. Let's talk about his coaching career. This guy was a private school in Texas, and I don't know if you guys know about private schools in Texas, but the football is not that great. The talent is not that great. We're not talking about like IMG Academy and whatever that Mater D or whatever out in California. We're not talking about those types of places. They don't have that in Texas. The big time football in Texas is played in public schools. So he's a private school offensive coordinator for a couple years, and granted, the team was really good. Then he gets hired as the head coach at Jackson State. He was there for 2.5 seasons. The half was the COVID year. He did really well at Jackson State, but he did really well at Jackson State with recruits that should have never played at Jackson State. And again, he's not getting a bunch of Colorado's not going to have a top 10 recruiting class under Coach Prime unless he can somehow manage to flip this year's record on its head. If he could go 11-1 next year, he might start getting some good recruits. It's just not going to fucking happen. They're losing tons of guys off the team they had that was a shitty 1-11 team. He has no nucleus. You can't just bring in, even if he was able to land, let's say he landed 5 4 and 5-star guys in this recruiting class, and they all panned out and they all made the field and they all had an impact at Colorado. That's not going to win you football games. The reason Colorado sucks at football is they have no defensive line and they have no offensive line. If he can't find some guys that can come in and block and some guys that can stop other people from running over the top of them, it doesn't matter what kind of skill guys he brings in. And that just goes back to my comment of it's a different game. So this guy's had 2.5 years of college coaching experience. If it was anyone but Deion, all these people that were dogging my ass out on that video last week would be saying the same shit I said. Which, again, wasn't even overly critical. It was just an honest assessment. Deion Sanders is not going to win the Pac-12 next year. I don't think Deion Sanders is ever going to win the Pac-12 at Colorado. And that's not hate. It's just the way it is. It's not easy. It's not a fucking video game. So there you go. Subscribe to the podcast. Tell your friends about the podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Neither one of those things will cost you a thing. You can find me on TikTok at Horn Takes Podcast. Like I said, I do a lot of videos, a lot of snippets over there. You can email me at horntakespodcast@gmail.com with your questions, comments, concerns, criticisms. I love them all. Book them.